Good evening and welcome to Legal Tech Live. I'm your host, Nick Rishwain, and we are here tonight with Jacqueline Schafer. Jacqueline is the founder and CEO of Clearbrief. You can find them at clearbrief.com. Jacqueline, I'm going to read a little bit from your bio for people to know a little background on you. I know that's embarrassing but it feels like it takes too long, but I'm going to try and do it quickly. Jacqueline began her career as a litigation associate at the New York law firm of Paul Weiss, Rifkind, Wharton, and Garrison, spent much of her career as an assistant attorney general in both Washington and Alaska attorney general's offices, where you specialized in appellate practice and complex litigation. And then before joining the startup world and founding Clearbrief, you served as a senior director program counsel for the National Child Welfare nonprofit Casey Family Programs, where you were negotiating agreements with courts across the country and managing litigation and amicus efforts in impact litigation, which is very admirable. And you were recognized, this is a cool recognition as well, recognized by VentureBeat as one of 4 semifinalists for the 2020 Women in AI Rising Star Award for founding Clearbrief, as well as for your law review article in December of just last year. So you've got just quite the pedigree of background here, and it's wonderful. But what I want to know is, what took you from the practice and then into the startup world? When did you decide? Maybe some of the life stuff that happened between practice and coming into, so that's kind of general, I know, but tell us how you came to this profession.
Absolutely. I think that probably my interest in the startup world really was sparked by moving to Seattle because it's like everyone in Seattle, is involved somehow in tech and the startup world. And just like, it just seeps into you after a while.
Sure.
But no, I think that honestly, it was experiencing the same sort of pain points over and over. I've always been the kind of person where I can only do something really frustrating and annoying so many times. And then I'm like, how do we get upstream of this problem? So I think having experienced all these, challenges with litigation for years, I was always sort of thinking about that. And then when I was in-house at Casey Family Programs and sort of working on understanding child welfare, the child welfare system, I started getting really interested in data and how, in data science, how the data was collected and how it informed decision-making at the federal and state level. So I'm just like very nerdy. I don't know. So I started writing a law review article in my spare time because I couldn't stop thinking about this. And that's really, my article was
that's really nerdy. Like, what I'm going to do in my spare time is write a law review article, right? I mean, that's, we got to work on hobbies maybe after this.
I know, trust me, I can't explain it other than I was just really interested in, this idea of that. I felt like I needed an outlet for my ideas. So yeah, I mean, just chipped away at it. And the article is about how AI will transform the child welfare systems and courts, basically. And so in doing that, it was a big learning process, right? About what is the cutting edge of technology. And around the same time, an opportunity came up to be a co-founder of a startup at this venture lab here in Seattle. And it's actually like a childcare related startup. And so I joined and, basically learned all startups 101 sort of from that experience, but I was still,
is that like an incubator type of?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually Madrona Venture Labs. But I have to say, I did feel like lawyers are not necessarily appreciated that much in the startup world, except for do my deal documents, and
right.
And, I had a lot of ideas that I've been thinking about. And so really when at the beginning of 2020, was around January 2020, I was ready to take the leap to pursue this, legal tech idea that had been bubbling for a long time. And I've shared the story like in other places of really how it kind of crystallized, which was around an experience I had in litigating a pro bono asylum case.
Okay.
And I, in those cases I'd been working on it for a really long time. But, when you get to the final hearing, that's it. You get one final hearing and your clients can be, deported basically if you lose. And I was
no appellate procedure at that point. After this final hearing is what I'm hearing.
Well, no, actually there can be appeals,
Okay.
but it's just very challenging.
Okay.
And very unlikely. And at that hearing, it's really about your briefing that you've submitted up to that point, and then any evidence that you're able to sort of present at the hearing. And I had this experience where I was talking about the arguments in my brief with the immigration judge, and pointed him to a part of the brief where I was talking about the main evidence we had. And I think it's common in a lot of asylum cases where people are, it's really challenging basically to have enough evidence because people are fleeing their home country.
Right. There's not evidence from the country of origin at that point, because how do you get that?
Exactly. And so I had, as part of building the case, I had gotten, my client evaluated by a therapist and built sort of, the case we need to build. But so there was just a moment where I, could see the judge sort of change his mind and actually see my client's position, and where initially I felt like we were, going to lose, right. Basically when from the attitude that I experienced at the beginning of the hearing. So it was really powerful because I was able to sort of show the evidence to the judge while I was making my legal argument, and he was, reading the therapist's report. And that, I really think that was what changed the judge's mind. And so it just really crystallized all these things that I've been working on and reading about around, how we can use AI to its fullest potential, which I think is much more interesting when you think about how it can reduce the administrative burden that we face and bring the information to the human decision maker and let us do our reasoning.
Using it supplementally to the attorney who's presenting the argument and the person who's hearing the argument.
Exactly. So that's like, I know it's very messy and it's not like one thing, but it's right. Just sort of a lot of things that gave me the courage, I think, to say, like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to, be CEO. I have a vision here. And the journey to actually, like, it's kind of like part 2.
Right.
That was like the idea and sort of the basic knowledge to even know what I wanted to build kind of was up to that point. And then I started out basically connected through sheer networking, like with a wonderful developer who helped me build a prototype. And I did an insane amount of customer discovery. What I don't think I even knew I was calling it customer discovery at the time, but essentially I talked to over 200 lawyers and paralegals and judges, and took really copious notes and just really started to see these patterns that were so similar to the pain points I had experienced throughout my career, and was able to get some early users of people testing out. We didn't have it productized at the beginning; it was just the algorithm. But what was really cool was even in some attorneys from very fancy firms were giving me their briefs and the record documents, the factual documents. And our algorithm was finding mistakes that even in these fancy firms, like they had made mistakes.
Right.
And so it was those kinds of moments and like early on where we were like, okay, I think we're really onto something. If we can do better than the teams of, super smart associates and paralegals and partners who are working on these things, then there's really something here. So then, I think really the next big milestone was when I, again, just through sheer networking of meeting one person who introduced me to another person, I met Mark Britton, who, he's the founder of Avo.
Right.
And an investor, and he lives in Seattle, actually. And so just through a series of Zoom meetings, I got him interested in the idea of clearbrief and really, believing in what we were building. And so he, became my first investor and advisor.
Oh, fantastic! Which is a great investor and advisor to have, somebody who'd had the experience in legal technology from way back and had an exit. That's fantastic. So then tell us what clearbrief does. For those, we've got some folks listening on the Facebook page. I see Carolyn, Julianne, and Mitch Jackson are with us here in the Zoom room. So we've got some lawyers. Alicia Kinchlow is over on the Facebook page. And if you have questions, our guest tonight is Jacqueline Schafer. She is the founder and CEO of clearbrief. So please do ask your questions. We'll try and get them answered on air. But tell us now then what clearbrief does.
Yeah, so clearbrief is a platform. We call it a platform, but it's you can think of it in two parts.
Okay.
The first part is that it's in Microsoft Word, so that as you're writing, a brief, a motion, a demand letter, a memo, whatever it is you're writing, where you're talking about the law or the facts of a matter, you click the little clearbrief icon and it will split your screen so that the right-hand side of the screen allows you to upload certain, any factual documents that you're talking about.
Okay.
Then clearbrief will analyze your draft and find everything in the document that's a citation, whether it's, to the law of a case or a statute or a regulation, and the facts, and pull up whatever you're talking about on the right-hand side of the screen so that you can see it. So that's extremely helpful for while you're writing, right? Just to even have it visually there. But it's also using really cutting edge AI to score your writing compared to the source document.
Okay.
So it quickly can help you see like, oh, okay, I'm citing to this page of the record and clearbrief is saying, I made a mistake. It's flagging it as red for me. Okay. And then clearbrief is actually able to suggest a better page. And it gives you a number of suggestions of like, actually, you might want to cite to this page or this page for that fact. Here's something that seems like it supports your sentence.
So is it pulling this from statute or case law or from the actual facts of your case?
From the actual facts of your case.
Of your case. Okay. All right.
Right. So, and so like, let's say you uploaded the excerpt of record and a transcript. It's just kind of like a basic example, or a bunch of declarations. Clearbrief can, and let's say you also uploaded opposing counsel's complaint or something.
Okay.
Clearbrief can find this mention of that fact across all those different places.
Oh, nice.
And so kind of it really helps being able to see like, well, I might want to cite to this discussion of this issue in the transcript, or maybe I want to show how, opposing counsel characterized it in their brief, or so it's just very handy, especially when you have massive amounts of, discovery.
Yeah.
So you can use clearbrief actually to, even before you've tried to find the page, like, when you're writing a brief and you're like, blah, 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 this happened, add cite, come back and find that. Like, I'm pretty sure this story went like this.
It's been so long since I've written one that no, I don't remember that. So
blocked it out.
I've blocked that out. But I get what you're saying. Like, I have to come back and find, maybe I need to find something from the deposition that fits here, or I need to, and so I'm sorry, I cut you off there.
No. So so clearbrief will then help you find, it's like, okay, well, that fact is here, and you can just quickly see it. It's displayed for you. And then, okay, so that's only like, I really wanted to build a platform that does a lot of stuff because when you're getting ready to file a brief or share, a demand letter or whatever, settlement offer, you need to do a bunch of stuff. So in the case of a a big motion for summary judgment, right? Like you also have to check every single site, including all the, statutory sites, everything. So Clearbrief pulls from publicly available legal sources for
Okay.
all the legal citations. And that becomes important for something I'll tell you in a minute. But then it also, this is another really amazing feature because it's our NLP is really good at identifying every single site in the document. You can, with one click, boop, it will build a fully formatted table of authorities. And you can just do that as many times as you want.
That's not, I mean, I'm just going back to college and law school when you had to do those things. And it was like, God, I can't believe I have to do this. Right. It was a nightmare just having to
Totally. And
Microsoft Word had made that somewhat easier. But I haven't had to do one in so long that I don't even know how to do it in Word. But if it's already created for you, that's really nice.
Yeah. The challenge with doing it in Word is that as you're writing, you have to be highlighting every case and kind of coding almost as you write. And
right.
Our goal is just to let you write. You can focus on writing and let technology do this boring stuff. But in order for it to be useful, it has to be really accurate. And so there are other products, for example, that try to pull up the legal sources or try to identify all the citations. And my suspicion is they may not be using cutting edge natural language processing and AI to figure out which things in the document are citations, because there's kind of endless quirks to that. But anyway, so when you're done, all right, you've done your table of authorities, you're ready to file. Now you go to the cloud, to Clearbrief's website, and that's where you can actually share that brief that you just made. That's now perfect. You can now create with one click this version of that brief that's fully interactive. And so every site in the brief is clickable and it will pull up the source, not only for the law, but for the record sites or any kind of factual site. So you're talking about opposing counsel's brief, the judge can read it. You're talking about something in the transcript, the judge can read it and they can scroll up and down and see the context. It's incredibly helpful to judges and they love it.
So they're not just reading the hard copy that was filed at the court or the digital copy now that's filed at the court. They can actually see, they can refer to other points in the record to
100%. So that it's taking, most of the legal system runs on these flat paper documents.
Yeah.
And just the time spent, it's pretty shocking. I mean, I found it very universal. It was around 8 hours per document, like per significant document that you're filing. And that's how much time individual attorneys are spending. And their legal staff are, if they have legal staff, are also spending at least that much time just cleaning it up with formatting, doing the table of authorities, whatever. And interestingly, I didn't even realize this until I, started talking to a lot of judges and courts. The courts are spending enormous amounts of time doing that too. Like, it's like we do all this work. We give them a plain piece of paper and then they have to recreate the wheel of what all that time. It really doesn't make any sense. So, that's the other really exciting part though, of what we're trying to build here, which is really a systems product that it works, equally well for the judges, who then can turn your flat paper document into something interactive, even if they don't get it as a Clearbrief document. If the court uses Clearbrief, then they can also make it interactive so that they can review it and see those facts and see the law easier.
Excellent. And Carolyn Elephant is here. Hi, Carolyn. Good to see you. She says she outsources finalization of her federal appeals briefs. We've never been able to do it cheaper in-house. Did I read that correctly, or you've never been able to do it cheaper than in-house?
Carolyn, you got to try Clearbrief.
Yes, Carolyn, try Clearbrief. So that is fantastic. So who is the primary market for this, for your service? Trial attorneys, litigators, or any attorney?
Exactly. So I think actually that's part of the challenge is that it's really helpful for anyone who does litigation. And but we're starting out really, of course, focused on litigators, but specifically solo practitioners and small firms who are sort of, having to go up against many times bigger firms that have tons of associates and tons of paralegals, and the solo firms are really struggling with the amount of discovery and just, under the weight of these deadlines. And many solo practitioners don't have any paralegal support either. So they're just wasting a lot of time doing administrative type stuff that could be repurposed for stuff they can actually bill for, because that was the other really interesting dynamic was that I found from so consistently, even at the big firms and the small firms, they're not billing for those kind of like 8 hours of site checking, cleaning things up, making it look good. Cause people just feel in general, like it's just, I took too long. We all just write it off.
Almost a feeling of guilt.
A feeling of guilt. And I mean, there's also significant pushback from clients that they're like, why did this take 30 hours? I'd pay for 20 hours. Like, it just seems excessive. And so just usually people are writing that off. But yeah, it's really interesting. So if you can recover some of that time and use it for billable work, it can have a real significant impact on the bottom line.
Yeah,
so that's why we're focused on solos, but we're also starting to work with courts and government agencies, because they are sort of like the influencers of the justice system. And, I think if we can succeed there, it really helps show the potential for how AI can truly help the justice system be a modern system and a modern workplace, to be honest, because it's too stressful.
Yes, it is. Mitch Jackson asks, can multiple lawyers work in real time on the same document from different locations?
Yeah, they can. What's cool about Clearbrief is that it actually really has a lot of benefits with team members, because if you and your associate, let's say you're working with a junior associate, you're the partner. I'll make you the partner in this scenario.
He is the partner.
You are the partner. So, you have your Word doc, right, of the brief, and your associate has, sorry, this answer has to be in 2 parts, but
okay.
You can actually basically review your associate's Word doc, and now you have an instant window into every site the associate put there, right? You can double check, like, does that case really say that? Like, quickly, okay, they're citing to this page of the transcript, but there's another quote on there that makes us look bad. So actually that's a bad choice, associate. And so that's really a helpful thing. But in terms of the real-time question, when you share the interactive version and it's in the cloud, that has a really cool commenting feature where both you and your associate, or you can also share it with a client. For example, you can comment on the draft as well at the same time as a source document, any source document that you're citing to. So it's interesting. I'm like explaining this visual thing.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
But it does allow for real, like that was actually a feature that was requested by judges, because when the judges get a pleading, they're doing that right now with their clerks with sticky notes, and they're like, well, they said this, and but here's the source, and with paper sticky notes. And so we sort of recreated that experience, but with tech,
with digital windows. That's and Mitch had also asked the second portion of that question is how many users, and which will actually get us into and allow you to take a sip of water as well. And you just let me know if you need a break that way. But he asks how many users in relation to that, multiple people using it. So how does it, which brings me to kind of the go to market, how many users per per firm? Do you pay by user? How does that work?
Okay, what's our pricing model? So we are not like publicly revealing our pricing model yet because we're
Okay.
so, incorporating feedback that we're getting. But I will say that it's definitely less than 1 billable hour of your time. And we're experimenting with a dual pricing structure of sort of like a per case cost, which I've heard from some folks who do certain types of litigation. It's just easier for them to do it that way, as well as sort of like an unlimited monthly per user option, recurring like SaaS subscription. So that's what we're working with right now, and I'm happy to talk more, offline. Too.
Sure. Yeah. You can reach out at clearbrief.com. I think there's a way to test it out. And that makes sense, actually. Jacqueline has done 120 of these and several, or 125 of these interviews, and several have come up with almost dual pricing structure, that because some attorneys are only going to need it on occasion, but then others are going to need it because this is a huge part of their company. They do briefs all the time, so they want to just do it as the subscription, whereas you don't really want to turn away the person who's going to use it this month and maybe does it again in 6 months. You just the more transactional client. So what you're saying is not surprising to me, and I think it's, if you can offer both, I think it's awesome.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're also learning is that sometimes people who thought like, oh, I'm just going to use it on this big brief, and then I asked them like, well, okay, like what else are you writing this week? Like what other documents are you working on? And they're like, oh, I'm not writing anything. I'm just doing like a settlement letter, and they list stuff like, they're doing an outline of their, for their trial prep, they're doing a deposition outline, they're writing so much. And what's cool is that Clearbrief can work on all of those things. And so we're going to do more blog posts and stuff showing how people are using it. For example, let's say you get in a bunch of discovery. A lot of times if it's, a medium-sized case, it's not like a massive, like there's not 10,000 documents. There would be like 500 documents. A lot of firms do, an index of discovery where maybe they have a paralegal do it, or they're doing it themselves, so that they know, okay, this Bates number was the, the police report. This Bates number was this. And so with Clearbrief, now the paralegal can write that, and it's actually linked to the documents, so that for the rest of the case, you can instantly, use your index in a much more interactive way. And it's not just, again, a flat piece of paper.
Right. And so you say that you can use that throughout the case. So is it tied to that document that you created, or you just go back to refer to that document?
Yeah. So anytime, like for your index, anytime you'd be looking at your index in the normal course of your work, it's now clickable.
Oh, gotcha.
Sites are interactive. And I see Carolyn has.
Yeah, Carolyn's got another couple of questions here. She says she often needs to cite regulatory decisions by utility commissions, which are rarely publicly available for free. Is there a way to cite that type of information?
There is. And yeah, Carolyn, I'd love to talk to you more about that, because we have a few users with that type of practice. And just like at a high level, the idea is you upload a custom citation. And so that's a process we built in, so that you could, just like with many, in many cases right now, people are actually filing the case law as an appendix to their filing, because it's so hard to find, like, I think it's so interesting. I've learned so much about, just how inaccessible, to be honest, so much of the things we're citing to are.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you saw, but like last week, as soon as the SCOTUS abortion, decision came out, the opinion came out, I ran it through Clearbrief, and we created an interactive, we, converted it into a Word doc, ran it through Clearbrief, and created an interactive version of it. But every time I do that to a SCOTUS opinion, I it's so interesting. They're citing to these obscure things, that the average person would have no ability to figure out what that is, or to find it, or to look at it. So if anyone from the Supreme Court is listening, you need clearbrief, and it would make the public better able to understand.
Yeah. In fact, one of your, I think in our Twitter, after I said, hey, great, congratulations on your fundraising. It was one of your colleagues or employees who I then had tweeted out something about wanting to see the text of the Texas statute. And one of your colleagues actually linked to that document that you put together. That
nice.
In that it had the link to that statute, which was okay, because I'm not practicing and haven't, but to get the full story, I wanted to see the text of the law, because I had heard it's this private right of action, which was different, right? And so they had shared that with me. It was very useful, excuse me. Carolyn, awesome. Yeah, so and a great way to show somebody who's got a question about this, how it works, right? This is like, why don't you just go and look at this? Here's what we've created from this. Carolyn also asked, and this may be one of the items that I was having a little issue with. She asked, does clearbrief's accuracy depend upon availability of a lot of case law?
Yeah, so remember, there's two big things that we're doing with the sites. I would say the truly amazing thing we're doing is with the facts, with the citations of the record. So those are dependent on what you provide, and it's whatever you're citing to, that's a factual thing.
Police reports, depositions, medical records, things like that.
Discovery, anything that you're talking about to prove what happened. So that there's no other platform or product that's bringing that. It's almost like fact research into the brief writing process. In terms of the suggestions and things, that's all related to the facts. For the legal sources, we've had, extremely good coverage based on, we have partnerships with the Free Law Project and Justia. And we're able to pull in, we're able to pull in almost everything basically that you'd be citing to. And if not, you can always, do a custom citation or something like that. But that is, yeah.
That's good. That I think I was unclear on that too. So Carolyn, thank you for bringing that back up, because I don't know that I was clear on that in the beginning, that the facts and making it using the facts craft your brief is really kind of the crux of it in this situation for now. But then you have these other affiliations that help with the actual case law and statutory law. So we're about 33 minutes in. I don't want to keep you all night, but I do feel like we should discuss the big elephant in the room, which was you just got this great news last week of funding, and congratulations on that. But oftentimes, so often with folks who are pre-money, they want to know how you went about it. And we've had lots of lawyers active tonight and fewer startup founders active tonight, but they always want to hear, how did you go about it? How did you seek funding? What was the process like? Can you give us a little background there? It sounds like you started your whole experience with networking, which helped a lot.
I would say I don't have any great insights there, to be honest. Like, it was a slog. And, as you know, women, especially sole founders who are women, women-led companies raise like less than, I think, 2% of all venture capital. So the odds were not in my favor.
Right.
And also I learned, surprisingly, venture capital, especially when I was starting my journey, like in 2020, right when the pandemic hit, And venture capitalists hate legal tech because, there have been some really high profile failures.
Explosions, yeah, or implosions.
Right. And the other thing is that VCs in general are all coming, they understand like corporate law, and that to them makes sense. But, so there's a lot of legal tech success out there with contracts and things, products that appeal to corporate lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes sense to VCs. They know nothing about litigation for the most part. And also citations is like so obscure.
Right.
So I really tried to, I think what was important was taking them on a journey of like really educating them about, I know you don't probably have any idea how we end up with these headlines about,
hot coffee, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Like it just seems like this very, obscure process like it, but I think that was really helpful. So that's sort of what I had to do though, over time. And actually I met, so my lead investor, Rain Ventures, an amazing Black women-led VC firm. I met Erica actually pretty early on because I heard her speak at an event for founders, and I reached out to her afterwards on LinkedIn. So there's like literally no magic there.
Wow.
And I got to know her, and she was very supportive from the beginning and really interested in Clearbrief. And so I just kept in touch with her, over time. And I started to get more and more angel investors, and some really amazing, once I sort of got, critical mass with these incredible angel investors like Mark Britton. Actually one of my, my early investors, and they're just wonderful. Beth Birnbaum and Barney Harford. And Barney was the former, CEO of Uber, and Beth is a board member of a number of companies and, startup veteran. And Bill Newcomb, Microsoft's first general counsel. So once I started and, getting some of these really impressive legal and tech
backers. Yeah.
Yeah. Then it started to get easier. And so I would say there's really no secret, and I just kept going, kept pitching. And that's really what, I've been so happy to see, just to see the kind of the caliber of folks who have invested in Clearbrief and who are, my advisors, and I can go to them for advice, like, Jack Newton and Court Lorenzini, who is the original founder of DocuSign. He's been so incredibly helpful. Just honestly, the early days of DocuSign, I had no idea. There's some really great stories that I've learned a lot from. So just really building my network was a slow process, and it just took a lot of one-on-one meetings. And I think in some ways, because during the pandemic, everybody was just stuck at home. I'm sure that there's a number of companies, that launched during the pandemic that actually found that gives you a little bit of a boost, because you could just pretty much get anyone to take a meeting. They were at home.
That's it. But that is interesting. So I remember I was talking with New Stack Ventures, interviewed Nick from New Stack Ventures on the show early pandemic, and I wondered, I asked him, how this was going to impact, and he didn't seem. I think I took away from that there were some smaller dollar investments in the early days, but that seemed to rapidly change, and almost. I know Jason Calcanis and some of the bigger angel investors were saying they were taking more meetings and the dollar amounts went up rather quickly. Do you think there was the Zoom meetings with investors leveled the playing fields in some respect? Did you have that experience, or was it still a matter of numbers? I have to get out the numbers and I have to keep making this presentation.
Yeah, I guess I didn't have anything. I don't really have anything to compare it to. But yeah, I think I just had to make my, do my pitch a bajillion times.
Yeah.
Lost count. And so I think also it got dramatically better. It was terrible and at first. And then also my pitch deck was so hilariously like just badly formatted and stuff at the beginning. And then like, over time, you just get better and better. And, but I think another really important thing to remember is that you also eventually, I think at the beginning, I was sort of just pitching any VC and ones that only focus on consumer. This is probably obvious to most people, but I was also taking, anytime I got an intro to someone, I was taking that meeting, and it's not always, the right investor. And
Mhm.
I'm so happy with where I ended up with the folks on my cap table. Like every single investor is just amazing. And it's just, you'll also, I guess, find the investors eventually. I think that makes sense for your product.
And so it sounds to me like for the founders out there, like you probably, but going through the numbers of making those pitches, there is a huge value in it, even if the people you're pitching is not necessarily, maybe you find out later that they wouldn't have been a good investor for you, or it wouldn't have been a good fit. But it sounds like going through that allows you to learn what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. And I feel like it's hard to give advice because everyone just has their own style. And,
Sure.
I got some feedback that was really annoying at the time from like certain types of investors. I remember I just have one meeting that would go incredibly well and get a really amazing investor. Great. To invest. The next week I'd have another meeting, give the exact same pitch, the same style. And then I would get this feedback that was like, I really like you, Jackie. I want to be candid. Like, we just thought your pitch is so terrible. Like, and I'm like, what?
So it's individual to the investor as well then.
Well, and I definitely feel like I faced a lot of bias, and,
Yeah.
I think some VCs really like the super confident, just glossing over every hurdle kind of pitch, and people who keep it really short, really tight, really polished. Like that's not my forte.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but you
So,
mentioned the bias, and this has been August and September. I've been, because I saw in the fall and early summer, I had a lot of male founders on, and I was like, oh, it's time to do a women founder series, because I really need, I try to promote our colleagues, our women colleagues, and I just saw that I had a lift. But you said you face bias. Can you share about that? Because I know other women who will tell me these things. Was it a women bias, or was it your style that you think was the bias?
I don't know, maybe a little bit of, it just depended on who I was talking to. But I mean, I can, the sexism that I've faced, I think throughout this whole journey, it's just so frequent and such a part of it that I've kind of grown to just ignore it at this point. Although I do feel like I'm setting better boundaries now of just, I don't continue the conversation with people who I immediately get a condescending vibe, or and conversely, I love talking to like certain investors or just advisors, just give me energy, because they approach the conversation with, curiosity and trust. That, trust me, I've been thinking about this a lot more than you have, probably. And so like random VC, like you've never thought about this problem. So like, for example, I'll just give you one little, like,
Sure, please.
Very early on when I was talking to people, and I was so, I was so hesitant to really accept the idea that I was going to do my own as a CEO, like, at first. And in one of those first conversations I had with someone from the VC community, and they said, we looked at legal, and, we just decided there's nothing there. There's no VC venture scale business there. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, and it really almost discouraged me. And then I'm like, but I'm a lawyer, and there's a lot of problems that haven't been solved. And this was coming from someone who had no background in law. And it's just that VC added, we looked at that, and so you have to really have conviction that a space, and, better than these random VCs. And, so anyway, I think that sexism. I don't know, but it was just something where, it can be hard to feel like you're going against the wisdom of people who are really, experienced in the VC world.
In the VC world, right. But not yet, there's still, the legal world is there's a lot of money. It's, what is it? I think conservatively $600 to $800 billion annual industry. So, and there are problems that need to be solved. So it's 6:45. I want to wrap up with what was like one of the biggest obstacles you faced, and then what is one of maybe your biggest successes that you just didn't know. And it could be the emotional aspect, it could be family during this startup phase, anything that's kind of a big obstacle that you faced that you're happy that you overcame or didn't overcome.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like startup life is just a series of obstacle after obstacle. And so it doesn't feel like any one of them was insurmountable. And that's, I think it is just, yeah, I mean, I think the rejection, that's probably just, it's just that's probably the biggest obstacle. Maybe it's because from my litigation background, like I'm used to going into an argument and winning.
Right.
So it was so disheartening to get rejections, and feel like, at certain points, like, well, because I bootstrapped the company until we got our first check, for months. And so that was a really hard obstacle, during the pandemic, to just keep going and literally just keep doing the same thing after getting rejection after rejection. So I think that's a very common, startup experience. And I hope that anyone listening who's thinking about doing a startup or just thinking about doing something hard that goes against the grain, it's just hard. And if you keep going and just, keep doing it.
So that kind of goes with the conviction of knowing your space, and I get, it sounds like having some thick skin.
Yeah, I think I remember hearing Kara Swisher talk. I really love her. But anyway, she was talking about how she thinks one of her biggest strengths is that she doesn't react too much to good things or bad things that happen. And I actually think that's really, I wish I was like that. So I think that's the key though, is just, if something amazing happens, enjoy it and experience it, but it's not really, you have to just keep doing what you're doing and stay focused and keep putting in the work. If something horrible happens, yeah, feel that disappointment and,
but you still have to keep putting in the work.
Yeah. And it's almost just like disassociating from the,
that's fair. That's fair.
Just, keep doing it. And yeah, I just think one of the biggest, most amazing feelings that I'm getting on a daily basis is talking to our users and hearing their excitement. And like, it's just thrilling. It really is to see how they can't believe, how helpful this is. And
it's a product that solves a problem, and that's a pretty good feeling. And you think was that the success for you? I know I said one obstacle, one success. Was that the success?
Yeah, I think that is honestly, well, I would say my biggest success is building a team that's really, really fun to work with. And really is, intellectually like engaged in what we're doing. And it's just very fun. And we really enjoy working with each other. And that's not easy to do when you're, you have a small budget, you're a small startup, and especially in a city like Seattle. And
I imagine most of this you've been remote and not in person with your team.
Yeah.
For a lot of
everyone, we're all fully remote.
Yeah.
So that has been an amazing success. And it just feels like we have such a great, support network as we're doing something really hard. So that is probably the biggest success.
That's awesome. That's very cool. So where do people find you online if they want to connect with you or learn more about Clearbrief?
Yeah. So clearbrief.com. And you can also email me, just literally email me, Jackie S@clearbrief.ai. I am happy to talk with anyone about I love talking about litigation or any problems. Just email me. And I'm also active on LinkedIn, and I'm starting to get active on Twitter, and just I'm like a very new Twitter user, but loving the legal engagement there. It's really cool. So yeah, feel free to ping me. And we also have a Facebook group. There's like 175 of us, and it's all just legal writing nerds. I feel like it's a niche where we're just like, agonizing over the opening lines of our briefs, and things that people who really care about writing will enjoy our group. And we also have a lot of writing related memes.
Oh, I bet you do. I know that's fun. That's great. So yes, and over on Twitter, it is Jackie G Schafer, and that's SCHAFER. I want to make sure that, and you said on email, it's Jackie S. Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
Jackie's.
Jackie's.
Yes, at clearbrief.ai. And our Facebook group is called Let's Be Brief.
Oh, very cool. Oh, that's a fun name. Well, thank you so much, Jackie, for being on tonight on Legal Tech Live. We'll be back next week. What is next week's the 16th. So tune in next week, 16th at 9 p.m. Eastern. Jackie, don't go away when we stop recording. Mitch, Julianne, Carolyn, thank you for being here. Alicia Kinchlow over in the Facebook group says, great conversation, and she looks forward to learning more about Clearbrief. And we will talk to you all next week. Have a good evening. Thanks again, Jackie.
Much.